Okay, this would have been broken up into like 5 videos if I hadn't been traveling at the time. Now, while I was sitting there overlooking the White House interviewing Representative Ro Khanna, a dramatic vote was being taken down in the Capitol building. It pertains to the debt ceiling. So, for those who don't know, and if you're not American, this may sound profoundly stupid, and that's because it is. It is incredibly stupid, and there's no excuse for it. Congress will write, vote on, and approve a budget, and the president is legally obligated to follow that budget. That is how the system works. Congress will approve a budget that puts the total amount of debt the U.S. government has incurred above the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is a completely arbitrary number that we can't exceed with regards to how much debt we've racked up. It's also decided by Congress, meaning that Congress will write and pass budgets that exceed the debt limit they also approved. What is the consequence of this? The consequence of this is that every single year, without fail, we need to have a threat of a government shutdown. We need to have the entire state threatened to be ground to a halt because Congress will not approve any more money to be spent in the budget they already said the president is legally obligated to follow. Usually what this means is it leads to another drama cycle of Republicans bitching about the deficit, and then they'll say that they'll vote on raising the debt ceiling as long as the Democrats agree to some kind of concession. It is arbitrary, artificial, made up, and deeply unproductive. Now, a government shutdown is a really, really, really bad thing. Every time it happens, it's, by the way, under a Republican Congress. Every time. Every single time. Every time this happens, it is a Republican Congress. No exceptions. Every single time. This time is no exception, with Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker and a Republican majority, however slim, in the House, also on them. Okay, so I want you to imagine, because this is all like lead up to what's happening right now. Like, this would have been its own video. But like, here's the lead up, right? So only with the approval of the Republican Party is it possible to raise the debt limit and therefore avoid a government shutdown. So what do the Republicans do? Well, they, as always, start suggesting ways that we can cut spending as a concession in order to get the debt limit raised. I think that there were a number of extremely high IQ suggestions put out there. I think that there was the suggestion that we stop funding Ukraine, of course. There was the suggestion that we cut 80% of funding to underfunded schools. So 80% of federal funding. Underfunded schools, like low-income schools, 80% of federal funding, gone. That's an option. I assume that there were Republican suggestions to cut, like, food for babies. I don't know. They're evil, right? But Kevin McCarthy, Republican House Speaker, held a vote and had it pass on raising the debt limit for a 45-day, it's 45 days, right? 45-day period. Basically, Kevin McCarthy, with no concessions from the Dems, approved a 45-day moratorium on the overspending, and thereby like giving us a bit of breathing room. Now, some people in the Republican Party really didn't like that because they felt that Kevin McCarthy, 45-day government funding bill, not the debt ceiling. My apologies. It gave a 45-day breathing room, gave some wiggle room, you know? Some Republicans felt that Kevin McCarthy was showing weakness by allowing this to happen without extracting a concession from the Dems. And as a product of that, historic rabble-rouser Representative Matt Gaetz, that's the child trafficking one, put forward a motion to oust Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker. And just the other day, history was made. If you'll follow me.
The yeas are 216. The nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
Unbelievably historic. This has never happened before. Now, 216 to vacate, 210 to keep. Where did these votes come from? The Democrats. The vast majority of Republicans voted to keep McCarthy, who was seen as a weak and ineffectual, but nonetheless like big tent leader for the Republicans. A small minority of far-right Republicans, including Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the like, voted alongside all of the Democrats to oust him. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Basically, yeah, don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. The Democrats have taken advantage of an incredibly small portion. I'm sorry. Marjorie Taylor Greene actually voted against removing him. My apologies. Greene and Boebert. Okay, to understand how marginal this is, Greene and Boebert voted against removing him. My apologies. Thank you for the correction. Matt Gaetz was the one who fronted this. I'm sorry if this is a dumb question, but like, actually, why did the hardcore MAGA Republicans just kneecap themselves? That's a tough question. Okay, so what happened here? Okay, there's a lot to talk about. Oh my God, again, this would have been like 5 videos if I had been here and hadn't been away on travel. Okay, so basically, if you'll recall, it took like 15 votes to get Kevin McCarthy in as the Speaker for the Republicans. And that's because the small group of far-right Republicans were basically doing force the vote shit, right? They were basically saying, unless Kevin McCarthy can prove that he's raped a baby recently, we're not going to vote for him. We want Donald Trump as House Speaker, or some nonsense like that. It took 15 votes, but eventually Kevin McCarthy was able to be put forward as the Speaker for the incredibly marginal Republican majority in the House. And in so doing, temporarily calmed the ultra far right and majority Republican groups within the House. However, as tensions have mounted in the past few months, including open and ongoing escalation in between Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy, things have gotten worse for McCarthy's tenuous hold over the leadership. So, one example of this being that Kevin McCarthy is keenly aware of the fact that if only a small group of Republicans vote to oust him, that would be all they would need if the Democrats go along with it. And the Democrats did, in fact, go along with it, voting to oust him. So wouldn't it be in Kevin McCarthy's best interest to placate the Dems? Yes, but he didn't. Kevin McCarthy went on TV and blamed Democrats for the threat of government shutdown, even though the Democrats have done everything possible to avert it and Republicans have done everything possible to cause it. He offered no concessions to the Democrats in order to keep them from voting with the far-right Republicans. My personal opinion is that Kevin McCarthy arrogantly believed that the civil-minded Democrats would never actually go along with this, that there's no way that every single Democrat in the House would actually work together to bring the hammer down on Kevin McCarthy. Yes, AOC did make a timeline, and AOC has been arguing on social media about how good it was, actually, for them to come together like this. 1, Congress was supposed to be on recess this week. Kevin McCarthy called them back for unclear reasons. If a motion to vacate the chair of Speaker is launched, the Speaker has 48 hours to shore up his support before the vote. He waived it. McCarthy recently got a clean CR through with more Democratic votes than GOP votes, but then immediately went on TV to bash Dems for trying to shut down the government. He then seemed to expect Democrats to bail him out. McCarthy also did not offer anything for Democrats to bail him out. Basically, he played the, he did the House of Cards shit and he failed. He tried to quickly rush it through, prevent like Democrat collaboration, bank on some Democrats at least voting to support him, and he failed. And now he's out, and this is historic. He fucked up. This is a legendary fuck up. There are people who ostensibly have connections to staffers in D.C. in the Capitol building saying that it is an absolute shit show behind the scenes. The Republicans are actually in complete disarray because it seems like now they have no one who can viably lead them. McCarthy was the closest thing they had to a compromise candidate between the broader Republican Party in the House and the far-right people like Matt Gaetz, who exist mostly to grift and virtue signal about how they want Donald Trump to be the House Speaker, and that's not a joke. There are actually Republicans saying that Donald Trump should be the House Speaker. I know that's insane, but they are saying that is a thing that is being said by some of them. It is an absolute shit show over there. Republicans were crying and praying on the floor. Yeah, there's a group of House R's huddled and praying on the House floor. Representative Ann Wagner seems to be crying. This is like, look, okay, normally it's all left infighting. Let's enjoy for a moment, okay? This is a shit show. I don't think I don't know if I'm like conveying appropriately how bad this is for the GOP. Kevin McCarthy was the person that they had banked on broadly to keep their very slim majority in line. The Democrats have demonstrated incredible consistency on this, with being a hardline no to Kevin McCarthy the whole time through and not giving in to this civility politics bullshit. You know, I feel like Kevin McCarthy really did believe that the Dems would just throw their hands up and go like, we have to keep the whole thing going. We have to keep the procedure going. We can't allow this to all fall apart and clean up their mess. And it just didn't work. It didn't work this time. Kevin McCarthy did literally everything he could to get ousted here. It seems to me like he wanted out. Maybe he wanted out. And if he did want out, then they are genuinely. Any suggestions on who could possibly be the speaker for the Republicans now? Do you have any idea how long it's going to take for them to even be able to gather together like a consensus on this? Yeah, McCarthy has said he won't run for speaker again. Like who? Isn't it going to be Matt Gaetz? No. Matt Gaetz has no. People, the House Republicans hate Matt Gaetz. They shunned him over to the Democrat side of the House chamber. There are people in the Republican Party who are calling for him to be expelled. They hate him. Matt Gaetz is a lunatic and is far right and is self-serving and is a child sex trafficker, but he is not like a representative of the party broadly. He belongs to the group of Republicans who are so MAGA-pilled that they have forsaken any like procedural understanding of or engagement with the way you do politics in favor of essentially being a pundit who also happens to be an elected representative. You understand what I mean? Like, you eventually reach a point of deliberate irrationality where you stop functioning as a politician and just are like a grifter who is also in an elected office. He's doing nothing but sabotaging his own party. Matt Gaetz has denied to run himself. If he did, he would have tomatoes thrown at him. If he ran, they would be tossing rotten tomatoes at him from the seats. There is no way. What do you think will happen now? I don't know. Nobody knows. Apparently, there are Democrats who are actually trying to speak with some of the more neocon-ish House Republicans to get a Democrat speaker. And a Democrat speaker of a Republican House would be actually the funniest imaginable thing in history. It would exceed any... Now, I don't think it's going to happen, even though they only need a few votes, folks. They only need a few votes. They would only need a few, not even a dozen. But if they could do that, it would be the funniest thing to have ever happened. So hopefully it happens. The temporary speaker, angry at this entire set of circumstances, kicked Pelosi, who is of course no longer House Speaker, out of her office while she was away at a funeral. Like, well, if we can't have our speaker, then get out of here, you bitch. Which is incredibly petty, like insanely petty, and very funny for how petty it is. Another funny thing is how Trump has stayed completely neutral in this. I think that even Trump understands this is something you can't touch on that much, because the thing that Trump would have to do is endorse Matt Gaetz for getting this rhino out of here. And if he did that, he would break the Republican Party in a way that he hasn't before. That degree of suicidal ineffectuousness would be a step beyond. It would go past, like, prior ineffectual statements and enter into a new realm of what if I just made everyone my enemy all the time. And that's why I think he should do it. I think he should endorse Matt Gaetz for putting forward the vote to remove Kevin McCarthy. After Kevin McCarthy's ouster, Stephen Scalise and Jim Jordan confirmed speaker run. Oh God, there's no way. There's no way. Hold on.
The office of Speaker of the House of the...
With no permanent speaker and no clear frontrunner for the job.
The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
Now former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy ousted by a group of 8 far-right rebels, joined by all Democrats.
If I lose my job...
Huge kudos, by the way, to every single Democrat taking advantage of the chaos and pulling the rug out from under him. It only would have taken a couple of Democrats who were like, we need a functioning civil leadership in our society. If anything, I would actually say this is the best indication that we've yet seen of Democrats operating differently to how they used to. Like, this is the biggest step away from, well, we're all on the same team that I've seen in, personally. This is playing the game. All this does, like this entire incident, it does nothing but further right-wing infighting. Dem House leaders reportedly showed the video of Kevin McCarthy blaming the Dems for the impending shutdown on the news before the vote happened, which made them mad. Good. Yeah, literally. Just have like, this is what you need like your House whip for, Just have running around with an iPad with a bunch of videos of Republicans being demons and just show it to all of them. The idea that Kevin McCarthy might have been able to keep his speaker role had he not gone on TV and just lied about the Democrats being responsible is so funny.
Over doing what I truly believe was right, I'm very at peace with it.
McCarthy saying he won't run for Speaker again, pinning blame on the opposition party and on his GOP opponents, led by Florida conservative firebrand Matt Gaetz.
You all know Matt Gaetz. You know it was personal. I haven't heard him say one true thing yet.
Speaker McCarthy's time is over. I have no personal animus to him. I hope he finds fruitful pastures.
I think it's worth pointing out as well that this ties perfectly in with my theses on the ineffectuousness of fascism. Like, this pulls in just perfectly. Fascists are stupid and bad at running government. So the more openly fascist a group of fascists get, the more they have to virtue signal and perform their fascism, and the less able they are to actually play the game and run properly. You know, it gets worse and worse and worse. So you have these like ultra far right Republican House members who are now tearing their own party apart. And like, for what gain, right? Well, they have to, because they have to signal their opposition to the not super far right, you know?
January, Gaetz was the last GOP holdout to oppose making McCarthy Speaker, ultimately voting present on the 15th ballot. To placate critics, McCarthy made key concessions, including lowering the number of votes required to start the process to oust a speaker.
By the way, I think this also acts as an incredible argument against force the vote as a strategy, because as it's been applied by Gaetz, it has only hurt their own party and their own cause. So, for one, by signaling that you're an incredibly weak faction within the Republicans, you forced Kevin McCarthy to have to appeal more to Democrats, because otherwise he wouldn't have the votes to shore up his leadership. And for two, when you do the you know, you're posturing over ousting him, the Democrats are now the kingmakers. It's almost as though politics will always work better if you form a unified bloc and settle disagreements behind the scenes, or at the very least not on the Senate or the House floor, as opposed to like actively destroying your own party on the House floor. The force the vote people like Brianna Joy Gray are acting that right now this is a sign of how force the vote works. Like, I'm not kidding. Right now, Jimmy Dore and Brianna Joy Gray are pointing at the Republican Party in its current state and saying, see, if you'd only listened to me, we could have had this, gesturing at like a trash fire. Do you think force the vote was a psyop? Yes, absolutely. The people who pushed it the loudest are all, like, to a man, objectively like pro-Russia grifters who exist to make money off of pulling people from the left. Yeah, 100%.
Just one. Last week, after McCarthy relied on Democrats to temporarily avoid a government shutdown, Gaetz vowed to try to remove him. McCarthy's response, bring it on.
We heard moments that precede incredible disaster, by the way.
Bring it on.
We heard Speaker McCarthy say that he wanted us to bring it on, so I guess we did.
House Democrats vowing to stay out of the GOP civil war made no effort to bail out McCarthy. That just nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy.
Nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. Nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. And why should we?
A long line of McCarthy allies denouncing the revolt. Even former President Trump saying on social media, why is it that Republicans are always fighting among themselves? And Congress is
Again, this is how bad things are, because you know that spiritually Donald Trump wants to agree with Matt Gaetz, because he knows that Matt Gaetz is a diehard MAGA loser. But you know that, like, when this all happened, Donald Trump picked up his phone and like 50 dudes at Mar-a-Lago tackled him and had to like pin him down and explain to him like, no, you will actually destroy the GOP if you endorse what Matt Gaetz did. Sir, you literally cannot do that. You cannot do that.
And Congress is headed home for the week without a clear leader for the majority party, in chaos brought about by 8 of its members. And until the House votes on a permanent speaker, North Carolina Republican Patrick McHenry will serve on a temporary basis. And in one of his first official acts, he revoked the use of office space in the Capitol for former Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
You're right, yeah. McCarty is a MAGA guy too, though. They're all MAGA guys to some extent or another. The difference being that Matt Gaetz and the other 7 people are it to a point of political ineffectuousness. That's the whole point, right? Like it is Donald Trump's party, but there's a difference between a Republican like either begrudgingly or somewhat willingly going along with the whole MAGA line because they still want to lead and they still want to rule, and people who are so committed to it that they're essentially just, empty mouthpieces with no adherence to any kind of political strategy. Gaetz did a good thing. I mean, he did a self-destructive thing, but like, I'm not going to give Hitler credit for shooting himself, right? Like, he should have done it earlier. This might be good, but I have a feeling the Kremlin is eating well when they hear this. No. This is unambiguously like good for us. The Republican Party doesn't benefit from this at all. Congress is already like gridlocked, right? Like, it's already an impassable institution that doesn't get anything done. This is just so much better. And the fact that there is any possibility, not a strong one, again, a slim one, but any possibility whatsoever that this leads to some kind of like dark horse Democratic House Speaker candidate getting elected is so funny that I need everyone to like manifest this, okay? I need you to like pray before bed. I need you to think about it in the shower. I need you to manifest that energy. It's very important. Another good way of showcasing how divided the GOP is on this and how bad this is for them is that they don't have a consistent set of messages. So I saw this and I think this is quite nice. Right-wing media figures are bitterly fighting amongst themselves after Kevin McCarthy is removed as Speaker of the House. So there isn't even like a consistent party line. And usually the GOP is pretty good about producing that. Steve Bannon says it's an incredible day. Tommy Lauren thinks it's grandstanding bullshit. People are attacking Tom Emmer as a possible replacement. Michael Savage is attacking Fox News. Kayleigh McEnany, that's former Trump press secretary, thinks it was ill-advised. 3 takeaways: Democrats always stick together, Republicans do not. This chaos is a manifestation of not having a red wave, omega lol. A narrow majority means that a few have power to overtake the whole. Tim Pool, hiding in his skateboard compound in West Virginia, is excited. Conspiracy theorist Fox News creator Molly Hemingway seems to be straddling the fence. Laura Loomer says, victory! Today is a great day for MAGA and a major blow to the Uniparty. John McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain, having a tantrum, accusing Matt Gaetz of tantrum having. You know what? I'm noticing a little bit of a pattern here. It seems like the closer a person is to actually being a functioning representative, the more likely they are to hate what's happening, and the more a person is a MAGA grifter who exists entirely to grift money off of the energy of right-wing voters, the more excited they are by this. Much like Force the Vote, where the people who are most excited by it were the like hyper-ineffectual grifters who exist to the detriment of their party. People who care about productive outcomes understand how bad this is for their group. Janine Pirro is apoplectic on Fox. Oh, I want to listen to this one.
I'm furious. First of all, we're without a speaker. This is historic. Something like this hasn't happened in well over 100 years. And now what we've got is total chaos when the Republicans are playing out their infighting on national television in a historic way instead of fighting Joe Biden's policies. The one time we are up in virtually every metric as it relates to the Biden administration, you've got the
To be fair to Matt Gaetz, if you want fascism, at some point you actually have to fight for it. Look, I get that he has the gun and all, but he needs to point it in a direction other than his foot.
Republicans going out there and showing how dysfunctional they are as Matt Gaetz is engaging in fundraising. And I got to tell you something. I am furious. There's no question that this is something that they have been trying to do for almost 9 months that McCarthy's been Speaker. And the truth is that they've done a lot in Congress. They've gotten a lot of bills passed. The fact that the Senate doesn't want to take them. They've done a lot in terms of oversight. And, now you've got the Democrats. This is a crazy thing. Democrats who hate the MAGA Republicans are now joining with the MAGA Republicans to oust Speaker McCarthy. This is like the devil is in the middle of all of this chaos. And Donald Trump.
I love Democrats playing the game. I love seeing it. Sean Hannity says, I guarantee you Democrats are doing backflips. They're loving this. I quote Donald Trump. Why? Ron DeSantis' unhinged press secretary says Ben Shapiro should be speaker. Okay, well, right-wing media now floating Trump as speaker. Bannon did it as well today. The idea goes back to 2021 as GOP regrouped from January 6th. Newt Gingrich wants Gates to be expelled from Congress. Okay, right. You can see how bad this all is, right? For them, I mean. Like how funny this is. It's so good. Like, I hope everyone understands just how much they've self-destructed here. A marginal majority in the House has opened them up to incredible weakness with the infighting.
96% of the Republicans voted for McCarthy. 4% voted against him. From my position as a longtime Republican activist, they're traitors. All 8 of them should, in fact, be primaried. They should all be driven out of public life. What they did was to go to the other team to cause total chaos. We ought to be focusing on Biden. We ought to be focusing on the economy. We ought to be focusing on the border. Instead, you're going to get a week or 10 days of the media focusing on Republican disarray. It's an astonishingly destructive...
I want to spend a year talking about it, please.
...behavior by a handful of egocentric people who think they're superior to 96% of the conference.
The best part is that with the conspiracy-addled far right, this is actually going to be kind of like a self-perpetuating system, because the fact that a bunch of establishment Republicans are calling for the ousting of those 8 is going to fuel into their belief that, like, they're on God's mission to destroy the rhinos and, like, the deep state, and that actually they need to go even harder, because fascists and political effectiveness are anathema to each other. They lose the ability to rationally analyze a situation and deal with it appropriately the more fascist they get, so it's just going to make them more crazy and therefore less effective. This is why, generally speaking, fascists have to do one of 2 things to gain power. They either have to kill a lot of people, not currently happening, or 2, they can only get that crazy after they've been given that level of power. You know, this is consistent in almost every properly fascist government, you know, in history. They either use violence to get there, and you can be irrational while using violence to attain power. That is on the table. You do not have to be politically sensible in order to use violence to achieve power. Or you only get that crazy after you already have the power. It gets worse from there, and it self-destructs eventually, but that's the game, right? But there's like this dissonance right now where January 6th was attempted, the violence didn't work, they failed, and now they're just kind of broiling, where the GOP and the certain far-right elements of it are getting angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier, but they're not actually getting anything done, which makes them crazier, which makes them less politically effective, but also louder. It works to their detriment. I'm very excited to see how this all plays out. Anyway, not to belabor the point, I'll move on from now. Just like, whew, god damn, I can't believe that happened while I was on vacation. Man, you know, I leave stream for a second, and do you think this could make the moderate GOP wing less willing to support Trump, or is he still non-negotiable? There is no public candidate more viable than Trump. However, you got to imagine that there are a lot of Kevin McCarthy loyalists, and that's the majority of the GOP House, by the way, who really don't like what's being done right now. Think about it. For a lot of Republicans, the people, like many Republicans in the House, are in political orientation, fascist leaning. Ideologically, they could have been neocons if this was just like another George Bush presidency, right? They're going along with the Trump thing because that's what's politically popular at the moment, right? Like they're shiftless, you know, that's what they did in 2016. Trump overtook the other candidates and then they all bent a knee. And now they have, you know, now they swear fealty to him, and that's what you get. But as they see this continuing, these problems being caused by Trump and his cronies, I don't know. I mean, they did try to groom Ron DeSantis into being the viable presidential candidate he failed to be, right? I mean, clearly there's some institutional desire to move away from Trump. This will probably heighten that tension.